and if your hand, even your stronger hand, causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than your whole body to be thrown into hell. You got a heart like a stone and a wandering eye.
Love you.
What?
I don't know how the song goes, man.
I don't know.
Is that how it goes?
I don't think that's how that song goes at all.
I don't even know the song we're singing.
Yeah, well, welcome to karaoke night on the Next in Line podcast.
Those are the beautiful vocals of Mr. Chance Pitts.
I thought Lane's vocals were beautiful as well. It was just, it wasn't even in the realm of what the lyrics were for that song.
Enlighten me. I don't even know the song we were singing.
I can't even think of the name of it right now. What?
And you did me dirty, man.
Apparently I did.
We're live. Come on now.
We're live. The Next in Line podcast. I don't think I got fully the video of you singing, but I think I got the audio.
You got the, oh, man.
So we'll play it back.
Hey, whenever I'm making it big on the karaoke stage, I'll remember you.
That's right. Join us for the Next in Line karaoke night at the local bar and grill here in Devine, Texas.
I know it, man. What, Charlie's on the green, right?
I think maybe they got some karaoke. I don't know.
Hey, dude, that may actually be a good time.
It could be. It could be.
Or it could be the exact opposite.
Nah, I think it's a good time. 100%. Oh, speaking of good times, there was a couple people that had good times this week, I think.
You dang right. So I heard.
So that's what we hear. Congratulations to Ashley Forshey.
Yeah, went out there and freaking knocked it out of the park as usual.
Yeah.
I think she actually set a new PR this past weekend.
Really? It was a 50-mile out at Arches, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Man, congratulations, Ashley. That's a heck of a thing.
That was freaking awesome. Getting out there, hammering down on the trails as usual. I mean, dude, we've seen her dusting everybody before. So
That's right. She almost brought the scrambled legs team back on that old habanero
so
relay.
close.
Dude, she was booking it. But always crazy, awesome to see her out there doing that thing and see people in our network just doing cool big things, you know.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely. And I mean, other one out there is Mr. Billy Pitts.
The other
I'm
one?
sorry, Billy Joggins.
Billy Joggins, Mr. Billy Pitts. Congratulations to my dad knocking out a 50K over in.
That's Tyler, right?
Yeah, I think it was running the Rose.
Yeah, yep. That's
50K
right.
out there.
And had new crew chief out there.
That's right, Miss Tammy Pitts. My mom joined him on the course out there as a crew chief, and I think he found a little bit more elevation than what he thought was going to be out there from the story
really?
I heard. Yeah. I think he ended up with 3,700 feet of elevation in 50K.
Dang, dude.
A decent little jaunt. You know, us flatlanders down here don't
Hey, man.
get into that too much.
You dang right. We had our 10-miler this past weekend, and I think I had 200 feet of elevation.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, you got
There's
to
a
give
little bit more?
You got a little credit. It was
Was
like
it?
350.
Oh,
Yeah, 350 feet over 10 miles. I mean, I'm not like some of these folks out in Colorado or Arizona or any other state with actual mountains.
Hey, you know, I'll take what I can get, I guess. But you got a lot more than I did on your second training run.
You're dang right. So we cracked the code. We got the secret intel, folks, on how to train for mountain races
Please enlighten everybody.
in Central Texas. Yes, sir. So there's a power line trail. It is literally
Bless.
just an easement for a power line that has a pretty rough trail, rocky trail, very technical, that leads along that power line for, I don't know, about 5 miles or so.
Hey, at least you can't get lost if you're following a power line there.
That's right, a straight line. You always find my truck. But that sucker is hilly, up and down. I think I ran out there about 20 miles and ended up with close to 5K in elevation, 4,800 or something like that, which for Central Texas, that's massive.
Yeah, I mean, It's better than Divine, I guess.
You're dang right. So anybody doing any races, Chris Barnes doing Leadville, and needs to find some elevation training, why don't you stop on in over here? We'll take you to the old power lines, and we can get after it.
Maybe just some training in general, Barnes. I don't know.
Ooh. Better get them legs
I've been
going.
seeing you on Connect, man.
He's been lifting. There was a purpose behind it.
I know, man.
Speaking of Barnes, him and Kyle sent us a little bit of merch. I don't know if you want to turn your old hat around. If you were on Instagram, hey, shameless plug, Next in Line Development on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. But specifically Instagram and Facebook, you saw some merch. We had some shirts. We had some awesome hats.
Yep. I'll turn my back around. Yep.
That's right. From them boys at Axis Recovery in Conroe, Texas.
Slick.
We're proud to be a partner of theirs here at Next in Line. And
again, I mean, dude, if you want some solid recovery, I mean, and you're in the Conroe area, you ain't gonna beat it.
That's right. If you mention Next in Line Development sent you by, they'll give you 10% off of your visit. And Mr. Divin, what do they have over there in Conroe for your recovery needs?
Man, they got top of the line saunas. They got some cold plunges, some Normatec boots.
Normatec boots. That's a good one.
Man, you're telling me.
Oh, man. I stole Layden's Normatec boots after my long weekend, and I haven't given them back yet. So
I know, man.
I know he's missing them, so he's gonna grab them after this pod. I tell you what, but
actually, I think they're actually running a promotion right now for they're looking for some athletes, right?
Oh yeah, I think I don't know if it's over yet, but it was like first 10 athletes to DM them, come by and try the shop out.
Yeah,
from what I hear.
Yep.
So if you're in that area and you want to do it, or if you're just visiting that area, shoot them a DM on Instagram. I think it's Access Recovery on Instagram.
Yep.
You can see them in our mention, some of our previous posts too there from our partnership here. And, man, just some good folks doing good things, trying to help you reach your full potential. So go see them. Chris and Kyle, great guys.
Yep, absolutely, man.
Yes, sir. Man, well, yeah, training for me. I found some mountains, found some hills out here, got a little elevation. Had a pretty big week last week. But, man, how is your training, your segue back into the ultra running world going?
It's good, man. It's good. You know, it's been nice getting to stretch out my legs a little bit. You know, I've picked up my mileage throughout the week. You know, we started at I don't know, we were knocking out like 4 milers, and then my longer runs were 5s and 7s, I think, something like that. But now, starting this week, I'll have some 6s and 7s throughout the week, and then my Saturday run we're looking at an 11 miler. So slowly increasing a little bit. I don't know, man. I've really enjoyed it. You know, I feel like this entire time I've been like right on the cusp of like what's the proper way to articulate it? Like I'm not hurt, but I'm like just sore, like just enough, like on my shins and like going out my legs and stuff like that. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
it does. There's a fine line that you push whenever you're out there of getting sore, tearing the muscles, and it being a progressive and positive, productive thing versus overstrain, overtrain, injury,
like
kind
injury,
of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got you. I'm with
you. You know, I'm sure a lot of that too is, you know, before recovery was not a priority of mine, and you know, I was dealing with some super tight hamstrings coming into this. My lower back was always hurting. You know, just typical lifting type stuff, I feel like. Because, I mean, you're going in, you're hitting the weights, and that's really all you care about, really. That and your food, right?
Yep.
But, you know, I've been going through and really focusing on stretching out. And, you know, I think a lot of it there is helping me out in the long run, too. So.
Well, that's good, man.
But it's been good, man. You know, outside of that, I am still getting to lift 3 days a week. I got a heavy leg day. I got a push day and a pull day. I did have a push day today, and I don't know. You know, sometimes you just have those workouts where it's like you're in there, you're trying, and like you just can't fall into that rhythm. You know what I mean?
I do.
And today was one of those days, but you know, still got in there, got some weight moving around, got her knocked out pretty solidly, and you know, on to the next one. So.
Well, good deal. I'm glad to see the training something you're getting comfortable in, stretching out them runs, and still hitting those lifts that you like to do.
Oh yeah, yep. So I don't know, man. I'm excited to see how it all plays out. I'm not putting anything out there into the world yet, but
That's right. The mystery
outside of the 3 of 7 race we got coming up.
That's right. We are going to Georgia here on February. We're leaving on
Probably the 9th, I think.
the early the 9th, the night of the 8th, something.
Yeah, something like that.
Driving out to Georgia to run the 3 to 7 Project Trail Race. It's a timed event. You get 4, 6, or 8 hours to go out there and run as many loops as you can. There's a big old hill on it because we like our hills here in the flatlands of Texas. So
at least there'll be some actual trees and not just weesatch and mesquite.
That's right. That's right. We get a little bit of foliage out there.
Some scenery.
Flora and fauna. But we go out there, man, and I got Lane Diven going to accompany us out there on the road trip along with Mr. Billy Joggins himself. And myself. I'm going to be out there too. I think Lane and Dad are running the 4 hours, and I'm going to try to bust out the 8, see what we can do.
Yeah, heck yeah, dude. I'm excited for it. It's going to be a solid. I mean, for me, it's like, yes, we're going out there to a race per se, but just treating it like a training run. It's going to be pretty awesome just getting out there.
I think so too, man. And the fellowship, the community that they have over at 3-7 is the reason we're going all the way out to Georgia for a race like this. It's not something we typically style-wise want to do or sneak into what we got going on, but hey, let's do it.
Absolutely.
Yes,
absolutely, man. Well, shoot. What's going on outside of that?
Man, I will tell y'all, and hey, y'all better zoom in for this one. Pay attention, all right?
Oh, Lord.
You see, we've had some tomfoolery going on in the podcast studio. All right.
Please enlighten us, Chance.
Well, first off, a little bit of context here. If you know anything about my family, we've got a pretty heavy past when it comes to ghosts and haunting and some rather interesting paranormal type stuff.
Outside of the ranching days?
Well, when we were at the ranch house, Lane got a first-hand account of it. Got some exposure to some pretty peculiar stuff going on.
Yeah, dude, that's I don't know. I still think back to that. It's just wild. Some of the stuff that,
Hearing people walk across the floors upstairs, hearing bangs on the doors in the other parts of the house randomly. Man, even seeing a figure in a window of an area of a house that was shut off completely and all the lights were turned off and the doors were locked. Yet we see a figure because the bathroom light's on upstairs in an area of the house we had shut off. Mm-hmm. Really weird stuff like that. And similar things have been around my family most of my life. Now, whether you believe in that or not, I understand, but the sheer coincidence of all these different things is something that has at least put me on edge whenever weird stuff starts happening. Mm-hmm. And wouldn't you know it, naturally, some weird things started happening in this very podcast studio. And whenever I say weird things, guys, I mean, I've been recording this podcast in the studio for almost a year now whenever we moved into this house. I've had table arrangements all kinds of different ways. If you've been with us from the beginning, you know this. Now, along with that, I've had cords all over the place. I've had a bunch of opportunities for the dogs to come in here and tear stuff up or knock stuff over because wires are exposed and that kind of stuff. And it's just flat out never happened up until this point. So I thought it was very, very weird and peculiar that the first week of January, some weird stuff started happening in the studio. Whenever I came in the first time, there was a few cords, mic cords in particular, and that kind of thing that were stretched out a little bit exposed, but they had been like kind of pulled back and pulled back hard enough to where it pulled my chair, knocked over the chair, had the microphone stand on the ground, microphone there, and my wires were kind of all jumbled together. And I thought, that's really, really weird, but could be the first time Axel Dog or Sam, one of our pups, came in here and got tangled up in them, whatever. Explain it off. Cool deal. No problem, right? Yeah. Then, man, I wrapped up all the podcast stuff. I published the episode, shut the door, wasn't in here for a few days. Came back in, opened the door, and I've got a red recording box that's pretty heavy. It's probably about 8-inch by 12-inch, and it's electronics. It's like I said, it's heavy. It's full of different things that make this whole podcast tick. So it's got some weight to it. And whenever I came in, it was laying on the floor upside down like somebody had thrown it on the ground. And it was a little bit more weird because it was very out of the way for any normal path that the dogs would take. Right?
Yeah.
So it didn't make much sense to me. And I started to piece a couple of things together. I started realizing that these oddball things started happening about the time we started discussing religion, Christianity, and our faith within the podcast. Now, rewind to the family experiences in the past with the hauntings and the paranormal stuff. Instantaneously, my mind started to race. I called a couple people in my family that had had similar things go on, that had exposure to this kind of stuff before, and I ran past them what was happening, and I thought it was weird. Then, after all that was said and done, everything was calmed down, I had the podcast studio set back up. I published an episode, shut the door, and let things rest for a few more days. Door was shut, mind you.
This is our last episode that we dropped?
Yeah, the last episode, it was the last episode, actually. Yeah. Okay. Shut the door. Somewhere in this whole mix, the door got opened again, right?
Yeah.
Then I came back in here to start getting ready for us to come in and record the last episode. And my GoPro that I used to film this episode was across the table on the ground, crumpled, and the microphone stand for the top of the GoPro, because I have an external mic on my GoPro, was busted. And I was really starting to kind of think that there's something around us that doesn't want us discussing what we're discussing.
Yeah.
And it put me on edge, man.
Because this is the first time, you mentioned it kind of in a roundabout way, but you haven't mentioned it in full detail until just now. So
yeah, so it just progressively got worse, man, is what threw me off, right?
Yeah.
So it was first the microphone and the cords all kind of jumbled up. Then it was my recording box thrown on the ground upside down. And then the GoPro and actually things damaged, right? So whenever it got to that point and it became very consistent, and to me, it was clearly evident that some paranormal stuff was happening here.
Yeah.
I finally decided that, okay, we've got a little one in the house now. We've got a lot more risk involved with what we're doing. There's a lot more innocence around that can't really defend itself or run away or anything like that. So I decided it's time to bring my wife in on what's going on and fill her in, right? So I sit down to edit out our podcast after we had finished, and I brought my wife in here and I sat her down and said, hey, look, there's some real weird stuff going on. I then sat down and explained to her the microphone stand and how I thought it was the dogs, of course, and then I moved on to the recording box and how it knocked over and how that could have been the dogs maybe, but it wasn't anything
still didn't make sense.
Yeah, and how it aligned perfectly that all this stuff started happening in the first week of January, right? Right whenever we started launching these podcasts and talking about what we had talked about. And at that point, I saw a little smile come across my wife's face. And I said, what? And she goes, nothing. What else happened? And I said, then my GoPro was thrown on the ground and the microphone stand was broken and there was actually damages. And I said, Lane, there's something in this house that doesn't want us talking about what we're talking about. There's something in this house that is against our faith, if you will. And I cited it back to all the things that she's experienced as well in the paranormal realm, being around my family. And at which point she stopped and said, Chance, when did we get the Roomba? Turns out, folks, we got a Roomba for Christmas. All right. And we were a little bit late getting back from the Christmas break because we went to Louisiana to see our family. So, wouldn't you know it, we launched that thing on the first week of January. So, if you see a very insidious Roomba running around,
rolling around, you better watch out, folks.
Old Clean Latifah was trying to keep our message shut down. Yeah. A malevolent Roomba was roaming in here and destroying all of our stuff.
Dang, man. I mean, considering like everything that we have experienced together, back at the ranch and knowing your history.
Oh, yeah.
And stuff like that. I didn't know where this was headed, and I was hopeful it was headed in something like this. And I even thought about, I was like, oh, why don't you place a trail cam in here? Maybe we'll catch something.
Yeah, no.
And, I was like, should I make light of it? Should I not? Because I don't know if this is like a serious one or if it's not. And then, old Queen Latifah strikes again.
That's right, man. And it just shows you, man, like it's so easy to jump on assumptions or think you got something figured out. And
it absolutely is. Yeah.
Not
Joke's
so
on
much
you.
there, brother. It also proves that our wives are always definitely smarter than we are whenever it comes to
absolutely
anything.
I think both of our wives would strongly agree with that.
Yes, very much so. But that's what I got, man. That's the story of the haunted podcast studio. So,
well, man, I find that hilarious, but thankfully, it's nothing bigger than that. So
that's right. Yeah. No, we're firing on all cylinders. I think what we're doing is a cool thing, and I'm still very inspired and very motivated to talk about the gospel and to start our journeys into this and keep progressing down the path that we've been going in. And man, the outreach from individuals, we've had a lot of people reach out and say they like what we're doing.
Dang, that's pretty cool, man. That's pretty awesome.
Relatable is the key term that keeps coming out.
To me, it's like, as long as, everybody gets like big ideas if you're going out and trying to make the biggest impact as possible, which is obviously our goal. Mm-hmm. But, even if it just affects one individual, that's what we're here to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if it is just one individual that we're affecting, then all of our time that we spend into this is more than worth it. So.
No, I agree with that, brother. And if there's anything y'all got out there that y'all are struggling with or needing to put in perspective or maybe talk through with somebody, don't hesitate to reach out to us. I mean, it can stay completely anonymous. We can talk about it here on the podcast. We can go through some scripture. We can go through our own personal experiences. We're younger guys, but man, we've got a lot of miles on these tires,
Yep, absolutely, man. I don't know, between the two of us, it's probably like 5 or 6 lifetimes.
Yeah, we've lived some creative lives, if you will.
But I did want to say, because you're talking, going back to like the ghost thing, right? How you don't want anything to stop us, essentially. But I mean, say that actually was something a little bit deeper, right? Mm-hmm. Say, there was some funky stuff happening. To me, it just even highlight even more so the fact that we are headed in the right direction. You know what I mean? Yeah,
reaching resistance through what we're trying to do. Amen. No, I agree with you. And,
man, just going through and diving into scripture, as consistently as we are, I still don't feel like I'm doing it enough. Big shocker. But, it's still like evident, all the things that, I've been struggling with and everything else is just like, dang, like now I'm starting to see a bunch of these different things, just feeling that resistance against yourself even at times. There's no growth without some tough times. You know what I mean?
I agree with that.
And, I think we're heading the right direction, man. So
I think so. And man, we're going to get into it here in just a little bit. But we jokingly say that, hey, 3 episodes deep in Matthew chapter 5, especially after we thought we were going to blow through the chapter.
Yeah,
I think we're
I
playing
think we
on
said 4 through 7.
4 through 7, and man, this is episode
After
3.
the end of episode 1.
That's right, episode 3, multiple hours in chapter 5. But
Yep.
hey, man, that just shows how deep this stuff is and how much this really means to us, and how much we want to make sure that we understand exactly what it is that we're talking about and learning, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's again, you can just pull so many different things, and then I'll go through and I'll find a sermon from somebody else or from somebody, because we're not really giving a sermon, but like I'll go find a sermon from like one of my old pastors from back in the day, where if they're throwing something up on podcast or whatever, or even like that one I sent you earlier. They're both diving through Matthew chapter 6. And just hearing the different perspectives on it, and kind of applying it to my own life, and thinking about my own perspective, and just some of the stuff that we've talked about too. It's just I don't know, man. Like, you can just dive so deep into all of it, and not to get hung up on a single chapter or anything like that. But I don't know. I feel like just going through a natural progression with our scripture and this study that we're doing. I mean, it's just been pretty enjoyable. So
I would agree with you, man. I would wholeheartedly agree with you. It's been a weird journey. One, just even coming out of the gate and thinking, like, how in the world would I ever relate to some of this stuff, or or these guys or these individuals, or even Jesus in some of these spots where a very challenging or tempting situation, and he works through it in the perfect way, and it's like, wow, that is super relatable, because I've handled that the wrong way so many times.
Yeah.
But it is cool to see coming from a place of like very strained faith to kind of really delving into and exploring this with an open mind. You know?
Yeah. And I mean, even from my side of it, having what I would call cheap grace, and just like turning them in times of need, essentially, would be the only time, and going through and realizing that there's so much more to it than just, hey, I'm in a tough spot right now. And then, praying through that time and seeing it through, and then like, all right, I'm good to go.
Yeah.
And it's not intentional, right? But you just, I don't know, like whenever you don't have that intention behind like what we're doing now, then it's not a priority and drops off.
Yeah. And I think there's
I don't know if that makes sense.
No,
but.
it makes great sense. I think there's some good things to take out of that as well, because I actually had a conversation with a very, very close individual about that same thing. It's just like, man, you have no room to ask for favors or his grace in a moment.
No.
Whenever that's the only time you come to him, or you've done so many things wrong that you can think of just today, and then you find yourself like, oh man.
Well, dude, I mean, one perspective to look at is like, do you know how one-sided of a relationship that would be, or is? Like, imagine, we have a friend and they only came to us when they're in a time of need. And I'm not a perfect individual, but every time they'd come around, I'd be like, all right, cool, what do you need this time? And then just be done with it at that point. You know what I mean? Like, that'd be tough.
It would be a very tough thing. But I mean, there's the other side of the coin is that, man, as much as we invest into ourselves, I mean, and pray for ourselves and the selfish side when we're in need too. I mean, there's some good foundational faith there, right? When there's nowhere else to turn, you're turning to the right place at the very least.
Very true.
Right.
Very true.
It's a good starting point. Right?
And I mean, without His grace and mercy, dude, we'd be in a tough spot, boy.
Very tough spot.
And so thankfully, we are able to turn to Him, and we always have been. And He's been forgiving enough to where we can do that, and there's no judgment. And then it's like, all right, we'll get you through here, and I'm gonna hope that I'm assuming I would think that He's like, we're gonna get you through this, and I hope that this prospers into more. He's gonna give us that opportunity, but He's not just gonna make it happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think, it's something, I mean, that's another topic in and of itself, of just like praying for something. and instead you could pray for the opportunity because that's what He's going to give you. But
Absolutely.
that's a whole nother tangent. Sorry.
It is, and that's a good point. And I mean, I guess my biggest point is no matter what it is, if it's a prayer out of selfishness to pull you out of a situation or a bind that you put yourself in or whatever, I do think there's a positive because the seed of faith that does live there.
Yeah.
Right? And also with that, I mean, so many people on the other side, right, where you say it's a one-sided relationship, there's so many people that struggle with the fact that, man, that's God. What could a person like me ever offer Him? What could I ever do to repay Him? Anything, right? To give Him even a fraction of what He has given me. And I think people can get lost in that very easy. You know, I in some ways, I mean, that was why it took me a long time to dive into the gospel, is because it's like, how is any of this relatable? These are legends. These are the apostles. This is Jesus. These are all individuals that are at a different level. They're on this pedestal that I can't even begin to reach for.
Yeah.
And so it is, if you find yourself in a spot like that, be leery of something like that. But I do agree with you, man. I think there's some great positivity out of that either way.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, you know, I think you hit the nail on the head. You know, there is positivity there, knowing that you can turn to them, and a lot of times we do, as we should. But now it's just on us to make sure that we're progressing more than just those tough times. At least that's my battle. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So.
No, I agree with you. Man, you sneak up on that mic just a little bit more.
Is that better?
I think that's more better.
Well,
maybe
I lowered it I lowered it. I feel like it was. There we go.
Still working out the old technical difficulties there for y'all.
We should just get them little Bluetooth headpieces.
Probably so. I don't know.
Be rocking.
Yeah.
Hey, then I could really move around with my karaoke.
That's the old Garth Brooks approach. Oh, man. Well, man, we kind of broached the subject on faith and Christianity and in Matthew chapter 5, which is our favorite chapter ever. Spent some time in old chapter 5.
So we've just been spending a lot of time in it. So, which ain't a bad thing by any means.
It's not, man. I think the depth of what these chapters of the Bible are is a surprisingly nice thing in some ways. Even though we spent a lot more time than anticipated. I know we thought we were going to blow through 4, 5, 6, and 7 all at once. Don't know where that come from, but we were misguided.
Yeah, it just kind of speaks to the like, in a way, this may come off bad, but it's like ignorance is bliss, right? The old adage there, but
I was a lot.
Go ahead.
I was a lot happier whenever I was ignorant of a lot of things. Man.
I don't know, man. I mean, again, it's just like, oh yeah, we're just gonna blow right through this, and here we are, episode 3, Matthew 5.
Matthew 5 coming at you live from the Next in Line studio.
So. But no, man, I mean, again, I don't think it's bad at all. It's going through and really giving us the standards at which we should live by at the end of the day.
I agree.
And even more so, highlights all of the areas that we continuously fall short in.
Yeah, fall short. I think the opportunity to improve is where we got positivity.
I say don't take that negatively. Now.
We can only go up from here, baby.
It's not a negative perspective, folks. No, I promise.
I know it.
I'm a very optimistic person, if you know me.
You are. You're one of the most optimistic persons. Even when you're yelling at us on the trails, you're optimistic.
But I mean, again, it's just like, oh, here's all the opportunities for improvement. So
that's right, man. And I think the opportunity presents itself, and we should take advantage of this and focus on. Let's just get through chapter 5 today, man. Let's round her out.
Well, let's get her done, man.
All right. Well, y'all come along for the ride as we dive into this thing. But man, we talked about salt and light, and then we bounced around a little bit through the laws, anger, adultery, touched on divorce, couple things like that. But man, I guess really moving through these. These are very important topics, obviously, but man, you just want to kind of bounce some of these different things that caught our eye as we read this chapter and close this out.
Yeah, absolutely. Kick it off.
Yeah, man. So after the salt and light and that great conversation, I mean, how open you were in the last podcast, which I'm super, super thankful for. You know, it dives into this teaching of the law. And, you know, Jesus came in and he wasn't exactly what everyone was expecting, right?
I think he's probably quite opposite.
Right?
Because, I mean, everybody's expecting, like, oh, our Lord and Savior, you're going to come through, knock everything down. We're going to be living in bliss.
Yeah, well, they were expecting the sword, right? They're expecting the revenge against the Romans who have oppressed them for so long, and this Messiah that was going to be this great military leader to deliver them from the evils that were, and he comes down and we see him in the Beatitudes and for some people the Beatitudes, and we
sad duckies,
sad duckies, baby. But we see him through this chapter and in many others. He's the Prince of Peace, man, living the name. Mm-hmm. And he talks about all these different things, and he talks about though he has come and the Messiah is here, he still requires you to uphold all of the commandments and the laws of Moses that were put in. And by the time it was all said and done, I think there was about 316 different laws. Fun fact for y'all nerds out there like me, there was 365 negative, quote unquote, laws, one for every day of the year.
I was about to say, does that correlate with the year calendar there?
I'm not saying it did, but it adds up pretty nicely. And then there was 248 positive ones.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's really crazy how expanded these were, and how crazy that this all gets based on these 10 commandments. So there was all these different laws that had to be upheld, and Jesus came and he expanded on them further, and that's what we really get to dive into here later in chapter 5. And he says that in multiple places here that what you have to do is you have to spread this word. You have to teach from a place of truth and from a place of kind of unbiasedness and not for self-indulgence. And that's where he came in and really criticized these Pharisees that were doing these things for the admiration of the people, for the respect, for the praise, and they had really lost sight of a lot of the true reasons why you were supposed to make some of the decisions and follow the laws and commandments that you were. Right. I thought that was a beautiful reminder just to kind of the death of self conversation that we've had a couple times, you know, and doing things for the right reason and following into faith rather than for the worldly praises that we could see. That's what I grabbed out of that first teaching of the laws, right there in chapter 5. But man, did you have anything you wanted to add to that, or anything for the teachings of anger, or anything that really grabbed onto you?
You know, again, man, it's just really been it's just been eye opening, just overall, just my perspective of everything and where I kind of lay on that spectrum per se. And going through and just, you know, I'm still piecing together a lot of this and trying to relate it to what I see and experience on a daily basis.
Sure.
And so I think you hit the nail on the head on that one, to tell you the truth. You know, but going into the anger and murder, you know, that next section in there, man, I mean, I just find it kind of crazy how we're just so reactive, or a lot of folks are so reactive to just situations and things that they really don't matter at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yet in here, you know, it says it kind of touches base on like the weight of anger in general, you know, and just going through, you know, and it says, "But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka is answerable to the court, and anyone who says you fool will be in danger of the fire of hell. I think in your version, saying you fool is equivalent to cursing, correct?
Yes.
Is what your version said.
It is.
And really it just kind of touches base on like the lightness we look, or like how light the weight of it is in our own perspective compared to where it actually lays at the end of the day.
Yeah, something that almost seems, I think what you're saying, like something that almost seems so insignificant to us because of the way society's been, right?
And how common it is.
Yeah. Hey, we live in a world where calling somebody an idiot or a fool so often.
I've said a lot worse.
Yeah. I constantly say a lot worse, man. I feel like, and then this come along and like perk your ears up a little bit, like, oh, wait, what?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that's huge, and man, I think you're right. The natural response, especially as guys, that, man, individuals in America and around the world, wherever you're at, it's not easy right now, right? Life's heavy. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things that foster a lot of emotions right now. The economy kind of sucks. The groceries are expensive.
Kind of high.
Yeah, there's a million things. The used car market is doing whatever anybody could possibly know. Nobody can buy a house right now.
How's that boat market looking though?
Don't even bring up the boat market. I'm trying to sell a boat. Hey, anybody wants to buy a boat, holler at me. Dude, it's so like, guy. Yeah, everything you want is, it's almost like the world is working against you, and maybe it is. That's a different conspiracy conversation for a different time. But it's so easy to grab onto these emotions and this anger and to curse and to lash out at others. And man, I think this is a beautiful reminder of really stopping and thinking and trying to understand a little bit more about situations and why people are doing the things that they're doing, or what makes people tick a certain way that's not exactly how we tick. Yep. And considering that before we fly off the handle. Mm-hmm. Before the guy that cut us off in traffic because he had an emergency going on and he was freaking out about something he just got news-wise, and he's trying to figure out how to get to the hospital, and we don't see any of that. We just see a guy that came across traffic and was driving recklessly, and we didn't put ourselves in his shoes for 2 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't take that step back and kind of ponder, what are the different possibilities for acting that way, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that's a beautiful reminder of that. And
outside of being a Houston driver, so.
Yeah. Oh, no, don't. I got to go to Houston in a couple of days, man. So I am not looking forward to that.
So good luck to you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to need all of that and probably say some prayers on the way over there, honestly. But it even says to the point of like, so if you're presenting a sacrifice at the altar of the temple and you suddenly remember that someone has something against you, leave the sacrifice there at the altar, go and reconcile to that person, then come and offer your sacrifice to God. So it's really reiterating that point of loving your neighbor there and your fellow man and taking care of those relationships and dealing with them so that everything else is peaceful and right in your life.
Yeah.
And it further goes down and it talks about not reconciling those in that last verse 26 of chapter 6 in Matthew, or chapter 5 in Matthew. Sorry, we're not to 6 yet. And it says, and if that happens, you surely won't be free until you have paid the last penny. And it just talks about how much you truly end up paying when you let emotions like anger run your life and you let it take so much away from you, because it's like forgiveness in that way. The only person it's costing anything is you, right?
Yeah, man. And I mean, something I just thought about too is, how many relationships have, either struggled or have been completely torn apart due to simple fact of letting anger get in the way.
Yeah. No, absolutely, man. I think my Lane, you're a saint too, but she's a saint, dude, because she can deal with the anger and the stupidity and just the the outrageous emotional reactions that I have sometimes, and just an example of that is right above me. There's a
The hole in your ceiling.
there's a little bit of a hole in the ceiling from maybe a little quick hasty reaction to a smoke alarm.
So I was gonna say the smoke detector.
Hey, it beeped in my ear. What did it expect? But it's just a beautiful reminder of the fact that, hey, we've got to slow down and still living with the lasting effects of that, and how much more am I going to have to pay for that hasty decision of punching a smoke detector because it beeped in my ear really loud whenever I was in a bad mood.
Yeah, I mean that's just one example, right?
Yeah.
Not in your life. Yes, in your life, but
Don't worry. I only have one hole in my ceiling. There's not multiple examples.
maybe we can just throw a frame up there. I don't know.
Yeah, a picture frame on the roof. Kind of.
But no, I mean I'm just thinking to some examples in my life where typically it does take quite a bit for me to get riled up at something. But I mean even then in those instances where I do let my emotions or anger get the best of me, it's like what is the what is the true purpose of it? Like it doesn't matter.
Yeah, what's
And
it gonna?
it's like there's no reason to be like that. You know what I mean?
No, I agree.
I don't know, man.
Well, yeah, I mean, dude, I tell people this at work all the time, and this is, I think it ties to this. It's like whenever two groups, because we have a bunch of divisions that work together that are all on different books, so everybody's trying to make money, and they don't care if the other one makes money, but they always think each other's trying to screw each other over and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's like, at the end of the day, we're all working for the same company, doing the same thing, and the goal is the best possible outcome. Yeah. And I think humans that here on this earth are experiencing a lot of the same thing. We're all just trying to make it through life alive. We're trying to make it through here with a little bit of comfort, not hate our jobs too much, not be stuck in the middle of all this crap, and to have a healthy family, a happy family, a little money in the bank, and be able to decide that we're going to grill steaks when we want to grill steaks, right? Be able to afford that. And I think people really lose sight of that side of things, the fact that, hey, we're all people, we're all trying to have the best possible outcome, whether it looks like we're working against each other or not. And it's really easy to get lost in that and get angry or upset and forget that.
Yeah. Yep. I don't know. I mean, just like so many other things, just, you don't take a step back and kind of look at the bigger picture of where you're heading or what the situation actually is in that moment. I mean, it's just easy to just kind of continue going down that path of destruction per se. So
yeah, no, I think it is, man. And moving to another strong emotion of lust, talking about adultery here, man. It opens it up right off the bat of, you've heard the commandment that says you must not commit adultery, but I say anyone who even looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart. And you painted it beautifully last week, talking about the over-sexualization of like Facebook, Instagram, social media, just everything, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like temptation is there, and it's even just the act of looking at someone lustfully, has already committed adultery with her in his heart. And you look at where we are as a society and where everything is just so sexualized, and we've kind of become numb to the standard of what this lays out compared to where we are now. Like, it's nothing to see, some pretty wild stuff anywhere you look, man. I mean, movies, like you said, social media and everything else, it's just like commonplace now for anybody and everybody to flaunt what they got, basically.
Yeah.
And, whatever the intent is behind it, I'm not certain. But I think, it's fair that anyone can make assumptions pretty easily, right? And, just the act of just looking at someone lustfully is adultery. Like, that's not a light thing.
No, it's not. at all. And, like back in the day, everybody looked at David and his issues with sexual morality and lust as like he was a big proponent of this, right? Like this was a big problem because of his affair and how he approached things like that. But the truth of the matter is, I mean, we have the dangers and so much more opportunity just at our fingertips.
I said literally at our fingertips.
Instantly, like it's his situation times thousands.
Yeah.
Right. And we don't think of it like that. It's like you said, it's so normal.
It's just the norm now.
Yeah. And man, what a turn we have taken. I mean, even 20 years ago, all of this was risque. All of it was like crazy. Like you would never do that. You would never go out in public wearing this or that. And you better like hide your ankles, right? but like here we are in this world that we live in now. And man, it does. It snowballs and it feels that. And along with anger, lust is such a powerful emotion that once it starts, it's a really hard one to put down. Mm-hmm. Right? It's a fire that burns very fast, very quickly. And I think there's a lot of guys, and myself included, that struggle with that like in a very strong way. So it's one that I think we really, really have to be careful of and figure out how we're going to deal with. And in verse 29 of chapter 5, it talks about, so if your eye, even your good eye, causes you to lust, gouge it out and throw it away. It's better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And then verse 30, right after that, and if your hand, even your stronger hand, causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than your whole body to be thrown into hell. And looking up kind of the analogy for that and kind of the metaphor that was used there, the eyes are the idea of the situation, that the lust in the mind, like it talked about committing adultery because you're lusting over the woman in your mind, and it's checking that girl out. It's seeing things or imagining things or picturing things the way you want them, and it's a gateway to the other side, which is the actual hand, which is the physical. It's the situation you find yourself in where this might actually happen, and one leads into the other, and that's why he's so strong about what he says and the metaphor that's used there, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, I don't know. Again, I think it's just one of the societal norms now, and just kind of looking at this, it's just apparent of the opportunities in that lie in front of us, I guess. It's something that a lot of people struggle with, and it's I don't know, man. It's tough.
It is tough, and we talked a lot about this one on our last run too, and we talked about that, and you emphasized kind of how graphic that depiction is of like gouging out your eye or cutting off your hand, and it's just the weight that it carries behind it, right? Because how big that one is and how strong it is and how hard it is to overcome it. It is a literally cutting off a part of yourself and getting rid of it.
Well, and I find it interesting how this is something I just pieced together. Like adultery is literally placed right before divorce in this section of laws.
Yeah.
Because that typically leads to divorce.
Oh, absolutely.
And look how commonplace it is to see divorce today. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't know all of the people, off the top of my head that have been divorced, but I mean, we both know, I'm sure, multiple couples that have been divorced.
Yes.
And it's just, I don't know, man. It's just kind of crazy just seeing, just kind of seeing it all and just seeing the standard here and relating it back to what we actually see in day to day, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and a lot of these situations we find under the old laws of Moses would have been acceptable, right? And it talks about in the verse 31, you've heard the law that says a man can divorce his wife by merely giving her a written notice of divorce. And that'd be fine if that was where it all ended, right? But then Jesus comes along and says, but I say that a man who divorces his wife unless she has been unfaithful causes her to commit adultery. And anyone who marries a divorced woman also commits adultery. And he reiterates that point. And one of the things that does is it highlights the sanctity and the importance of actually working through issues and like trying to preserve a bond in a marriage, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's going through and actually following through on the commitment that you made to your wife. I mean, it's following through on the covenant that you made and that promise that you both made to God. I'm still new in my marriage, but I mean, I know that, everybody has their ups and downs, right? But you also have that obligation to do literally whatever it takes to get through that situation. And it's in those times that, that's a grand opportunity to really lean into God in that relationship, and that's how you continue to prosper, man. And if you just throw it all away, then what's the importance of marriage if you're just gonna give up? You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree with you more, especially in this disposable society that we live in today. And how easy everything's so accessible. I mean, you see divorce lawyer billboards and commercials and stuff like that accessible. You hear jokes about it all the time. I used to be the world's worst about joking about it. You know that.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime something would go wrong in my relationship, or Elaine would like the smallest thing, she would like not even mess up, but just like do
I'm
something.
divorcing you.
Yeah, just like that's it. Get the papers. But like it's a serious thing, right? And it's crazy how much that's been a normalized aspect of life, and
I think it's just got to be one of those things like taking quitting off the table. Like it's just it's non-negotiable. Like it's not a choice.
Yeah, I think so.
Like we have issues, but we're gonna freaking work through it.
Yeah,
and that is the promise and commitment I made to you in front of God, because you are who God gave me.
I like that a lot. I think that's beautiful.
I don't know. I mean, that's just kind of where I stand on it. So,
yeah,
whether right or wrong, I'd like to think it's right, but I'm not always right. So,
man, I'm not either, but I think that was just about as right as anything I could have possibly thought about in that realm, man. I think that was awesome. And then rolling with that, obviously, if you're getting married, you're taking vows, but it says something about vows here in the teaching of vows.
Mm-hmm.
And it touches on several different things, but what it really places a emphasis on in a roundabout ways is your actions and your ability to be an honorable person.
Yeah.
Right? Because throughout this, I mean, there's several different things. I'm not going to read you the whole section here, but it says that do not make vows. Do not say by heaven, because heaven is God's throne. Do not say by earth, because that is God's footstool. And do not say by Jerusalem, for Jerusalem is the city of the great king. Do not say by my head, because you can't even turn one hair white or black. Just simply say, yes, I will, or no, I won't. Anything beyond this is for the evil one. And the reason that's so much in the honor realm and in the action realm is it's basically saying you shouldn't have to say all this other crap.
Yeah. That we so commonly do today.
Right. Oh, I swear.
But
I swear I'm going to get it done. I'm going to hit that deadline. Don't you worry. By the hair on my second cousin's oldest child's head, I'm going to get it done. Don't worry.
Get it done.
And then you're like,
I mean, it begs the question: why are you having to go to that extent?
Right? Because you're supposed to be honorable, truthful, uphold your commitments in these actions you've committed yourself to, right?
In today's age, that's pretty wild concept, man. But absolutely, I mean, I've always thought, you are, like you are based off of your word. Like your worth is based off of your word, right? Like if I can't trust what you're gonna say, or if you're not gonna follow through in what you're gonna say you're gonna do, then I mean, not that you're meaningless or pointless, but how can I believe anything? You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, you're gonna have to swear on 7 kids
And then I said the more justification you have to make saying that you're gonna get something done, then the less I am to believe that, I guess. You know what I mean? So
yeah. And for those of y'all watching, here's a practical application of that, just kind of a perspective of where we're at with this world today. I mean, even whenever I was younger, you could have a handshake deal, but Lane Divin here is somewhat of a Facebook marketplace truck guru. All right. He has bought and sold so many trucks on that and Craigslist, right? Where you got to trust the word of somebody. But how many lately times have you just felt 100% about going and giving a handshake deal to somebody and just trusting them out the door, straight up at their word? I know there's been times.
There's been times, but it's not too often.
Right? So it's a spot where, man, even I remember whenever my dad would go buy a truck or we'd buy a boat or we'd do this or that, and there was a handshake involved and there was some commitments and there was some time of waiting, whether you had to go to the bank and get the cash or whether it was the exchanging of paperwork or even like, man, I got you one. The counterfeit pins for cash used to not even like I never would have thought anything like that was needed, but nowadays it's kind of foolish to go to a cash deal without one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, dang, I haven't even thought about that.
So like some of
kind
those,
of making me wonder if I've gotten screwed on some stuff, man.
right? No, but it's something that like it used to be just a handshake deal, a man's word, and you move on because you understand commitments, and somebody looks you in the eye and gives you a handshake, and it's a good thing, and you didn't have to make all these vows, but it's amazing that this book that was written thousands of years ago, right, discusses something that's so relevant today that it's come to a point that society has moved away from the trustworthiness again and to a spot where, man, everybody's just trying to get one up on somebody else, it seems like. And because of that, there's this lack of trust and there's just swearing upon everything you could possibly imagine, right? And we're told right here not to do that.
Yeah, I think it just speaks so plainly to the fact of let your actions speak louder than your words.
Amen. I agree with that. Man, and the next section, revenge. Man, revenge is something that's been so idolized in like every movie I've ever watched and romanticized in that way too, man. Like I love the movie Princess Bride and Inigo Montoya's whole thing is he's trying to get revenge on the three-fingered man, and so I know it's a goofy example, but it's just so prevalent, right? It's so prevalent, man. It's a romanticized thing to where people just feel like you've got to do to others exactly what has been done to you, and that's what the Old Testament taught, right? We've heard the eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, but then Jesus comes in and says that's not quite right.
Yeah, and man, that can be tough at times.
Be very tough.
Yeah.
Man, as a speaking as a young guy that's just full of testosterone and anger and lust and all these things I'm not supposed to be doing, man, it's so hard to set that aside sometimes, right? So hard to step back from that spot and whenever that handshake deal falls through.
Yeah.
Whenever that counterfeit cash hits you and the time's wasted, the energy's wasted, the effort's wasted, and you just feel like somebody has taken advantage of you or wasted your time, it's so easy to want to get back at somebody. it's so easy to want to go back to that guy that cut you off in traffic and go around him and give him the finger, or better yet, cut him back off, right? Or not let him in next time there's a lane switch and there's a merge or something, right? But
I think it's just so easy to like justify it in those moments,
right?
And right here it says, if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also, and man, it's just so much easier said than done, especially whenever it's something that hits you a little bit deeper. But that's what we got to do.
It is. You had a good point from your study Bible too about the left cheek and the right cheek.
Yeah. In my study Bible, it was saying, it's not necessarily being cowardly and turning away, but more so, turning towards that individual. It was kind of referring back to some cultures, and it may be prevalent today in some cultures. I don't know, but how the right hand is reserved for certain things, and same with your left hand per se. And in this situation, if he was to hit your right hand, or I'm sorry, your left cheek with his right hand, and then you turn to give him your other cheek, that in turn forces you to have eye contact with the individual or the situation in general. And it's speaking to the fact of, don't be afraid to stand up for yourself, but realize that you can't be doing it from a place of revenge or vengeance or anything like that. It's so much more than that. So
yeah, I think that's a beautiful point. And I think whenever somebody wrongs you and you react the way they didn't expect you to, like you said, turn and look them in the eye, and or turn the other cheek, or whatever it is, you're putting yourself in a spot where you're not seeking the revenge, just like we see here, and you're really just coming to terms with it and making a full evaluation and in a way showing mercy and forgiveness on this person. It makes them that much, for a normal person at least, and a good person, it makes it that much harder for them to take advantage of the other cheek and slap again, right? Because you're expecting them to fuel the fire back to you, to react. And that's why people do things a lot of times, is they seek a reaction, and a negative one, but when they don't get it, they're left standing as the individual that was in the wrong solely. And that's a heavy weight to bear as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, giving them the mercy and grace that you just wish that at times you'd give yourself, I guess.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's another topic,
surprise.
ain't it? Man, yeah, learning to give ourselves the mercy and all that, and the grace, and forgive ourselves and treat ourselves the way that we're supposed to treat other people. Man, that's its own hard process, right? Not to talk about the outward facing is hard enough, but then manage to forgive ourselves, especially somebody as critical of ourselves as you and myself are, right? But we could beat that horse till it's way, way past dead.
Oh yeah.
So I think, man, we done the dang thing. We're right at the end of chapter 5. We finally made it through
We're
this.
here, folks.
You're welcome. And we'll get to roll into chapter 6, but definitely not without closing out chapter 5 by talking about something that seems wholly, that's with the W, wholly unconventional. Right? Teaching about love for enemies.
Yeah.
I, believe it or not, I've made some enemies in my life. I've got people out there that do not like me. Now, there's an argument to be made that maybe they don't like a version of myself that died a couple of years ago, and that I've buried deep inside of me, or I've killed and buried out back, and he no longer exists here. But either way, they are definitely enemies of mine out there for things I've done or who I've been or things they've done and who they've been, right? And it's so easy to get caught up in that and to roll into any one of these past situations, especially the conversation about anger and want to carry out that revenge or that anger or be that person that gets even with someone else. But we're taught here, right, practically at the front. But I say, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. In that way, you will be acting as true children of your Father in heaven. For he gives his sunlight to both the evil and the good, and he sends rain on the just and unjust alike. And it goes into several examples there, and it talks about, if you only love those who love you, what reward is there for that? Even corrupt tax collectors do that. If you're only kind to your friends, how are you different from anyone else? Even pagans do that. But if you are to be perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. Sorry, a little dyslexia kicked in there.
Oh, no, man. I mean, again, I think it just kind of reiterates the fact of, one, you got to step outside your comfort zone. It's not an easy thing to do, to go love your enemies, obviously, right?
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's the opportunity for you to continue to grow in. You're not going to grow any more than, if you're just continuously staying in those situations that are comfortable to you. But once you step out of the box and you start applying some of these harder principles to your own life, I mean, that's when you're going to start to see, that growth that you're probably looking for. And there's no greater place than the opportunity to love your enemy.
Yeah. I think it's a beautiful way to put it. And it's just reiterated by the fact that, man, nothing in the past few years of progress in your life, my life, Dad's life, Chris Barnes' life, Michael's life, there's a million examples that surround us in this network of people from Next in Line alone, let alone the whole world. Nothing that those individuals have done have been the result of staying where it was comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
It has been diving into the hard stuff and into the areas of life that they didn't necessarily feel comfortable going into or didn't want to go into. And I can't imagine something more true in that regard than love for enemies. That's something that's wholly uncomfortable, something that's so challenging and impractical seeming. And yet, those are all the places that we find that growth, just like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a beautiful example, man. And it says it here that all of that, if you are to be of someone of faith, if you were to be a follower of Jesus and to have faith in God, He, regardless of how you feel about it, He gives sunlight to the good and the evil, and He sends rain for the just and the unjust alike. And it's not our places to judge. It's not our places to see who fits that bill or who doesn't. We are to unconditionally be there, to be supportive, to love those around us. And I think is it in Paul, I believe he says that all of the great commandments can be summed up with love your neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
If you do that and you do it right, all the other commandments are fulfilled.
Yeah.
And I think it's
not an easy thing.
It's not an easy thing. It sounds so simple, but not easy.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds so simple, but I mean, that's essentially just going to be one of your life endeavors. You're going to go through, you're going to find areas where it's like, okay, I can easily make that adjustment and give that person grace and mercy or whatever it may be. And I'm going to go through and love them as though I wish to be loved. But then I promise you, God's going to be like, okay, well, let's see if we can push you just a little bit further, a little bit further, right? and just continuing to push that envelope. And it's up to us to take advantage of those opportunities that lie in front of us. And again, man, I mean, I'm speaking to myself more than anybody else right now. It's again just another opportunity. So
Yeah, man, not to make this go longer, but I just thought of a great example. I had a good friend that has been having a lot of issues with leadership at his company.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been some major changes. There's been some major things come out, and he dealt with a change in leadership that was beneficial. And there was all the opportunity to be kind of a jerk about it, or maybe a little bit of smart aleck about it, and to rejoice in someone else's pain of them being moved, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what he chose to do instead, and I think this reiterates that point of loving your enemies so well, and it just clicked with me whenever you said your explanation right there. He actually reached out to that individual and told them thank you for everything they'd done for him. Thank you for all the opportunities, the lessons, the value, and chose to love that individual instead of being one of the people to cheer as the statues were torn down and as the idol was removed, right?
As the whispers were strewn about.
Oh, all over.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought that was a great example of what that looks like practically in life, because that, man, a tough manager or a bad boss, quote unquote, that's an enemy. That's somebody that's working against your peace constantly, and man, that's a hard thing to be a big person about. So
yeah, I mean, again, it's a challenge, but it's a challenge that's gonna give you growth at the end of the day. And if that's something that you're going through, and I think it's something that we can probably all find within our lives. We all have different challenges, but I feel like we can all probably reflect on an individual or maybe a circumstance or a situation, maybe a group of folks. I don't know.
yeah.
But I challenge you to have that same reaction. Be that bigger individual. Be humble. Put yourself down. And love your enemy.
Yeah. Man, I think that wraps it up. Somehow, some way, we are done with chapter 5.
Heck yeah, man.
Man, it's been awesome.
Yeah, I've thoroughly loved this chapter, man. I mean, again, there's so many different takeaways, and I know that there will be throughout the entire Bible.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's just been cool, man. Just going through and everything that's just kind of been highlighted in my life. All the areas that I'm falling short in, and all the areas that I can improve on, and all the opportunities that are there, for growth and everything else. It's been pretty eye opening, but pretty. I don't want to say awesome. I want to say something more than that. I always say awesome, so it's pretty awesome.
Pretty awesome indeed, my friend. No, I feel the same way. And if y'all have had a favorite part of this discussion in chapter 5, man, drop it in the comments. Let us know. Reach out. Shoot us a DM.
Yeah.
You can reach us at Next in Line Development on Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok. Man, also, if you got something out of this episode or any of these episodes that we've put out here recently discussing this, and keep in mind, we're two guys that are exploring our faith and going through this process and wanting to share that with y'all because we know how many people out there are in that same situation. If you received some value from that, if it helped you, if you laughed at Lane's karaoke or or any of the awesome excitement going on at the beginning of this, maybe like a malevolent Roomba or anything like that, y'all just share this show with somebody that might get that same kind of value or entertainment. That's why we're doing what we're doing, just to help people out and to help that day go by just a little bit better with maybe a good positive message within that.
Yeah, absolutely. Get out there, share the folks, share the show with all of your folks.
There you go.
There we go.
Tongue twister. 3 times fast.
And then outside of that, one other thing, folks, if you haven't realized, episodes are now dropping on Wednesdays.
Hey, we were supposed to say that.
Yes.
Good job. Thank you.
So, man, creep back up. I was like, I need to make sure I remember to say that. So, episodes are dropping every Wednesdays now. Be on the lookout for them. You got anything else, man?
Man, I don't think so. I think
Cool.
Saddle up for Matthew chapter 6 if y'all want to study ahead and be part of this conversation. But
Yeah, absolutely.
I think other than that, it's just, man, glad to be through chapter 5. Got some good training going on. Congratulations to some awesome people within this network doing some awesome stuff. And
We got some big things coming.
big things coming,
So-
brother.
Absolutely. Well, y'all get out there, y'all lead the way, and always be prepared for whatever it is.
Next in line.
Adios, folks.
That's right.